With me today are the smart people who really made this happen. I'm largely just a pretty face, ladies and gentlemen, and even that is a little shaky. So this is Tasha Jones. Tasha works for the law firm of Boone Carlberg, and she and her partner, Scott Stearns, who isn't here with us, provided local counsel as we pursued the condemnation action. On my far left is Harry Schneider. Harry is a partner at the law firm of Perkins Coie. Harry works out of Seattle, and we stumbled upon Harry through our bond counsel and met in Missoula, and we established a rapport and a relationship, and gave Harry a chance to wear a white hat, and he has worn it well, along with Tasha, Scott, and lots of other folks who have been enormously helpful in this process. And this is Dale Bickell to my immediate left. Dale is the Chief Administrative Officer of the City of Missoula. Dale is, as I said earlier today, both my right and left hand. And Dale has been instrumental in the complex financial transaction that has allowed us to get where we are today. None of this has been easy. None of this has been painless. None of this has been smooth. None of it has been without controversy. And I would do it all over again because it was the right thing to do. This is about a difference in philosophy, and it's a stark difference, and I don't think you even have to apply a lot of judgment to it. The fact of the matter is that that a for-profit utility is about taking care of investors, and a nonprofit publicly owned utility is about taking care of citizens, ratepayers, and customers and human beings, right? And so where we are today is we will purchase this system for $96 million, along with the pieces that come with it. We'll pay our fees. We will buy the system. We will operate the system. We will service the considerable debt. We're borrowing money to buy the system. We will service that debt. And we will begin to make improvements in that system to the tune of about $6 million a year on deferred maintenance that we believe represents about $100 million of investment. We'll begin making those improvements to the system, and we will do it without raising rate. Doesn't mean we're not going to raise rates. That will happen eventually, but when we raise rates, the reason we'll do it is because we're paying people and we're fixing the system. Those are the only two reasons that we'll raise rates, because we're not beholden to investors. We're not beholden to anyone but the people we swore to serve, the people we swore to take care of as a function of our jobs as public servants, right? These utilities, and I won't mince words, these utilities are cash cows. There is a reason that Liberty bought a system 2 years later from Carlisle, a system that Carlisle paid $150 million for $327 million, and it's because they're cash cows, right? They bought this system knowing that a third of it was part of a condemnation proceeding, and they assumed that liability. That's how valuable these systems are in terms of corporate ownership, right? We needed to stop that. We needed to take care of our system and take care of our people. That's why we pursued this. It wasn't because I didn't like Carlisle. It's not because I'm a commie. It's not because I've got a vendetta, and it's not because I need to leave a legacy. It's because it's the right thing to do. It's a monopoly. Monopolies do not serve people. The reason they're regulated is because they don't serve people. So they have to have sideboards. The problem is that public service commissions don't have the resources, the wherewithal, the tools they need to regulate appropriately. So again, citizens suffer, customers suffer, communities suffer. Right? So that's why we engaged in all of this. We are here to answer any questions you may have. The very smart folks on either side of me are happy to talk with you as well about the pieces that I'm missing as a function of these remarks. We're not here to tell you how to do your business. We're not here to suggest that we understand your politics, your circumstances, but there are some things that we share in common, and we've learned about some of those things today. We're here to share our story. We're here to answer questions. We're here to offer our experience, our hopes and our dreams, and to support you as you consider what I think is likely the most important activity that a community can engage in 2017 in the United States of America, particularly in California. Thanks, folks. You've been a great audience. Good night. Thank you.
I want to ask the first question, but some of the things that you encountered as you entered this process, and I wonder if your team could just comment on the new things you learned or the hurdles you had to overcome, but in order to get the knowledge base in order to proceed successfully in court.
There is a lot that we didn't know when we began this process. We made some assumptions, particularly financial assumptions, as we were engaged in trying to understand how to model this thing, whether we could actually afford it. And the playbook from the private utility goes something like this. You're government, so you're incompetent. Your government, you can't afford it. Your government, and nobody's going to lend you the money. Well, we've operated a wastewater utility at the city of Missoula for decades. Today, our wastewater rates are among the lowest in the state of Montana. And we've made about $30 million worth of investment over the course of the last 15 years in that utility while maintaining some of the lowest rates in the state. That's because we know how to run a utility. We have a degree of accountability that a public service commission, in the case of the state of Montana, does not have. And one of the things we learned is that not only is there limited accountability, there's also there's also limited energy bandwidth, as the young people say, to pay attention to this stuff, right? So the Montana Public Service Commission, an elected commission of 5 members, only one of whom is elected from the district that serves Missoula. And in this case, this particular commissioner was not elected in the city of Missoula or Missoula County. He had enough votes in the rest of that district to get elected, but he wasn't elected by the folks who he is serving, particularly in this case, as he regulates this water utility. They're regulating one water utility. They're much more interested in gas and electric, and they're under-resourced, and the financials are tricky, is my most diplomatic way of saying that. And the team can talk a little bit more about that. So one of the things that I think we didn't expect was we didn't know how much money there actually was in this thing, and there was a ton of money in this thing. We also didn't understand, I don't think we understood the degree to which the defendants would fight to hang on to the system. We should have taken Robert Dove at his word when he said he will make this as expensive as possible for us. He did his best, but it still wasn't too expensive. I mean, and I'm not sure how you put a price on this, frankly. At the end of the day, this is a really long-term decision, and it has a long-term benefit, and the cost of not doing what we did is much higher than the cost of doing what we did. And as I've told people earlier today, I would have been irresponsible had I not pursued this action along with the Missoula City Council and the citizens we serve. Tasha, what other surprises were there?
I'm too short to be behind that big podium. Surprises. So, let me talk about some parallels. What we learned in the discovery process through our request for production of documents revealed some staggering things about our water utility. You think because it's a publicly regulated utility that these things are transparent, and the reality is they're not transparent. There is a cloud, there is a barrier to what is actually made public. And so through the discovery process, we learned a lot about why it is that in Missoula, Montana, even though we have a groundwater system, why we had one of the most expensive rates in Montana. Does that sound familiar to you guys? Yeah, so there's a parallel there. Why is our water so expensive? And so through the discovery process, we learned some things, and we learned them in a way that is going to strike close to home for you. We hired an expert engineer from a national engineering firm called HDR, and he, in his background, he was an executive for American Water Company. Ah, sounds so familiar to you. Yes. And so he helped us understand how it is that a private investor-owned utility can extract profit, how they can fool the regulators, how they can exceed investor expectations for not just what is authorized, but more. So we asked the right questions, and we learned a lot. We learned that, they manipulate what is maintenance versus capital expenditures. So, and this matters a lot, right? So what is maintenance? You're not supposed to get a profit on maintenance. You only get a profit on capital expenditures. And yet, under American Water's ownership, and what we saw under Carlisle's ownership was the same, was that everything's capital expenditure, everything, right? A headset for $100 is a capital expenditure project. Okay, I mean, nothing really is maintenance, everything is capital expenditure, so that's different. What we found was a administrative services agreement. So it was interesting that Mountain Water Company never ever showed any profit on their books, no profit. But somehow the parent company was able to spin dividends out. So how does that happen? How does that happen? You should ask American Water about that. So what happens in Missoula is that Mountain Water was paying this services fee of $2 million, $2.5 million every year to California. And what that meant is that for the president of Park Water, who's sitting in the fancy office in Downey, California, and earning a very big salary, we're paying a third of that. And what do we receive for these services? No one could really explain. We deposed the local folks, and we said, well, what services do we get for $2.5 million a year? And they said, governance and oversight. Well, what does that mean? It means governance and oversight. Well, how often do you call them? When's the last time you talked to these people? Maybe a year ago, but when I need them, they're there. Well, what do you need them for? So there's one big thing, and I know that you experienced the same thing in your area. There are other ways. There was accelerated depreciation, which is just another word for profit. There's deferred income taxes. We were finding $100,000s of dollars in trustee fees. We were finding $40,000 travel and entertainment charges. we found a $1,000 coffee maker. I mean, it just, the list went on and on. And so all of this is the same thing that's happening in your community. In Mountain Water Company, we had a system that was leaking terribly. And I know I've learned through visiting with folks here that you have community issues regarding fines and penalties for overpumping, and the project the desal project that's on the horizon for your community. For us, it was leakage. So what we learned through discovery is what hadn't been shared with the Public Service Commission, which is that our system was leaking more than 50% water. So what should have been going to consumers, 50% was leaking into the ground and never even reaching the end users, and yet ratepayers were paying for the production of that water. 4.6 billion gallons of water were leaking out of the system, are now leaking out of the system every year. That was our community problem. Yours are different, but they're the same. Because ratepayers, they have to pay. They're on the hook no matter what, right? Ratepayers have to pay for those fixes, whether it's leakage or a desal project like you have in your community. At trial, we presented evidence that showed you have two ways to fix that problem. You can do that at a profit, which is the cost plus 10%, and that's plus all the other stuff that's going on. Or you can do that from a community perspective, and that's at cost. You can fix the problem where your motivation is short-term profit for investors, or you can fix the problem from the perspective of a community, where your interests are long-term. Your interests are preserving water for your grandkids, and you do that at cost. And that's the type of evidence that we presented at court that led us to convince a judge that it was more necessary that we take the system now and start fixing it now and putting every penny of what we take from ratepayers back into the system to make it better for our future generations. I'm sure I missed some stuff, so I'm going to hand the mic to Harry.
I don't think you missed a thing. So, I can stand on this telephone book and be able to stand at the podium. I don't have much to add to what Tasha said. It was really an eye-opening experience because I think, as one of us said in closing arguments, the city of Missoula has learned more about its water system in the last 15 days of trial than it's known for the last 50 years, of how it operates, what the financial considerations are, where the economies of scale are and are not. I said earlier today to John that, I look back on it, and the themes of the trial were what I'd call issues of care, issues of cost, and issues of competence to operate the system. And on the issues of care, it was really an effort on our part to, like the old dragnet, just the facts, ma'am. Are they taking care of the system? And the evidence was that they were neglecting necessary infrastructure, maintenance and improvements, repairs, pretty basic stuff, to the point where the court found that they really should be putting in about $4 to $7 million a year in improvements to get the system back up to acceptable standards, to get the leakage rate down from 50%. Can you imagine 50%? Half the water that comes out of the aquifer goes into the pipes to customers, to households and businesses in the city of Missoula. Half of it doesn't ever arrive because it leaks, because there's so much disrepair among the pipes.